What's up, guys? Welcome to Dance Games Daily, where I talk about dance games every weekday and try to have guests on for interviews on Fridays. That I can't promise that all the time, but this week we do have a guest. We have SteveReen with us. He is the developer for Waterfall, which is the theme being used for ECFA 2021. He's also someone who I consider among one of the best kind of hybrid tech and stamina players in the world. How are you doing, man?
Pretty good.
Do you want to give just a brief intro of yourself, maybe who you are, what your background with rhythm games is, and what communities you're a part of, either kind of like regional communities or online communities?
I'd say so. Okay, yeah. So I'm Steve. My introduction to rhythm games was basically back in 2004 when I moved to the East Coast in 2004. And one of my cousins just had a DDR Max 2 with for the PS2, and that was the first time I played DDR. I think I saw it at a Best Buy or something before that, but I didn't really understand the game or anything, so it didn't really matter. But when I actually played it there, something sort of just clicked, and I don't know, I thought it was fun. So, but I didn't have a PS2 at the time, so I basically what I did was I got some shitty dance pads, soft pads off eBay, and a USB connector thing, and I found out about Stepmania, and I played that way for a little bit, but those pads don't work very well at all. So they broke within probably a month. But I eventually got one of the ignition pads that they had at the time, the red octane foam pads, which was actually really solid for what it was.
Those are underrated, I would say.
No, they were those, specifically the red octane ones, were actually really good at the time, and I got up to playing ITG 14s on them. So that was how I first got good at DDR and Stepmania, was just playing at home on a PC on Stepmania with an ignition pad. But yeah, so I got some DDR song packs and whatnot, and that was how I learned the game. And I don't know, I just couldn't stop playing it. So I guess it all just kind of spiraled from there. So that's my introduction. Obviously from there, I discovered ITG from going to an arcade that was near me that had a DDR cab upgraded to In the Groove 2. That was a couple of years later after I first started playing, and then from there it's R21 came out and everything else. But as far as the communities I'm a part of, mainly right now, there's only a few that I really am active in. It's mainly Stamina Nation, which is Ian's Discord for stamina dance game play, and then the ECFA Discord I'm pretty active in recently, especially obviously with with ECFA 2021. I was pretty involved in that, and then there's just a local the rhythm game players at my local round one have just a small server that we just kind of hang out in, so I'm active in there as well. But that's pretty much it as far as my community interaction. So yeah.
What was your introduction to kind of competitive level ITG play for both tech and stam?
So the earliest I would say was the arcade that I went to, which was it was Tokyo Game Action, which was in Winchendon, Massachusetts at the time. They had monthly. They were pretty much just local tournaments at the time. And they had tournaments for DDR and ITG, and I would mainly enter ITG. And the funny thing about that was, before I had ever gone to one of those, I didn't really even I had no context of how good other people were at the game. I was just playing the game just by myself. So the concept of people getting 99s was foreign to me, and I because I was just wanting to pass the hardest songs. So when I first went to one of those tournaments and people were getting 99s on nines, I was like, holy shit. It's but so that was the first competitive experience, and from there that was what started me working on timing more. And then the first bigger tournament I went to was Rocky Mount 10, which was in the Rocky Mount, North Carolina, and that was a long time ago. But and I the funny thing is that was also when I like didn't know anyone, so I didn't talk to like anyone the whole time, and I also got kicked. I got out of the tournament like first round, so that was fun. But you got to start somewhere.
Was it still fun?
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
It was just like, yeah, it was overwhelming for me because I didn't know anyone, and there was like hundreds of people there, and that's like a situation I'm not very good with.
Yeah, I think it's crazy. Like, I think I missed the old days because I noticed something with your intro compared to other people's, which is that we all seem to have started the same way, which is just like some DDR like max or ultra mix like home setup, and then just like one thing bubbles into another, and like we're just full blown into this game for the next 10 or 15 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of crazy because like I don't know, it just seems like this such like this innocuous thing that like I just happened to like play DDR at my cousin's house like years ago, and like that's where my life is now.
Oh yeah. So into the meat of the topic today. I don't know if this is like an easy to answer question, but what would you say Waterfall is?
Yeah, so I mean, what it is it's a theme for Stepmania. It's heavily working off of the foundation that Simply Love created, which was originally more or less kind of like a conversion of Matt and Lara's Simply Love theme that was made for ITG. So Simply Love for Stepmania 5 was Quietly Turning's project, which basically ported Simply Love to Stepmania 5, which along with it came like more or less like an outlet for ITG to be played in the engine of Stepmania 5, which is a pretty big thing. But Waterfall is just like me kind of re-examining a lot of things about the game that we're playing and trying to push it in different directions to improve the game in a lot of ways. And some of it is experimenting with things and, just kind of like features that I've seen from other games and think would work well in the environment of what we're doing. So it's maybe that's like not the best explanation, but I guess like at its core, it's a Stepmania theme. It's just trying to kind of improve the environment that the 4-panel customs community plays in is more or less what I would say it is.
What would you say some of like the key features are of Waterfall?
Yeah, so the main thing is it goes away from ITG's like base metrics that it uses. It has its own set of timing windows, which come with their own set of like judgment names and all that. And it has its own life bar mechanics, which are completely like the life bar system is one of the biggest like technical things about it because it's all like custom Lua code, and it has similar logic to the ITG life bar in a lot of ways, but it also kind of goes by its own rules in other ways. But the main thing about it is that there's 3 life bars that are running at the same time, and so you can get a hard clear on a song, or you can fail the hard life bar and drop into the normal life bar, and then you can just clear it that way, or you can get an easy clear. There's also a basically revamped scoring system or like high score saving system. So rather than just saving your personal best like percentage and that being what your high score is, which is more or less what ITG does. It does a few other things, but they don't really ever manifest in any meaningful way. It saves a lot of separate aspects of your performance, like your personal best clear type, which is based on, it's kind of like the lamps for DDR. Like you can get an awesome combo, which is kind of like a PFC in a way. That sort of tiered system. So it'll separately record your full combo tier from your percentage score from your. It also another concept it expands on is FA plus, but it integrates FA plus in a way that's a little more flexible than this is the way Simply Love normally does it. So it's not hijacking one window at the expense of another window to give you FA plus. It's just like, is this step within the FA plus window? Okay, like then count it. That's more or less what it's doing. So there's actually two tiers of FA Plus that it counts. Well, sort of. There used to be three, but like depending on whether you're playing ITG mode in it or the regular waterfall mode, like you can set FA plus to either 10 milliseconds or 15 milliseconds. But 15 is also just the base size of the top window for waterfall anyway. So I guess those would be the big things: the high score system, the life bar system, and like FA plus. The fact that it runs ITG simultaneously as like its own separate game mode. So you can that's like another big thing that it does. So if you want to see your score on ITG, whether or not you were actually playing like in ITG mode as it were, you can see what your judgment breakdown and life bar graph and all that stuff for ITG was. And you can just play with that like with ITG as like what you see in gameplay as well. And no matter which mode you're playing, it runs everything at the same time, so you never like lose out on any of the other stuff. So to summarize, I guess those are the big things. I guess there's other little details, but like those are the big features that I would highlight. Yeah.
And then actually, I think my favorite feature, which you didn't talk about, which I don't even think is like could be Waterfall exclusive. I think it could be implemented for Simply Love, which is the song hash caching system, which it's been a pretty common problem in modern ITG where like a song will be released in a pack, but then that song is kind of re-released in a tournament pack, so now your machine is kind of cluttered with 3 copies or 4 copies of the same song. And then you've kind of created a system to make sure that the scores are able to be tracked across all of those duplicates.
Yeah, so that's another thing that that's in the realm of something I still consider kind of an experiment because the benefits it has are really good, I would say. Like the people who understand what that's doing have pretty much mostly said that it's a good thing. Like they like being able to see that they're like they played a song in ITG Alex's Stamina Safari, and then they go into the ECS pack and like their score is like there, and it's like, oh, that's cool. But like there's other problems like technical issues that come like the actual hash cache thing that it has to do was like this huge thing that took me like a month to actually do, and it's still not ideal, I would say. There's still issues that some people have had with it, so like and I don't know, it's a generally like it's like kind of an inconvenience as well. So that's still something I'm trying to improve and see if because there was a point where I was like, I don't know if I even want to keep the hash based scoring in because it just seems like I don't know if the problems that it has are like outweighing the benefits, but it seems like the people who like what it's doing like think it's valuable enough to keep in. So I still want to try to like at least make it less annoying in the ways that it is.
Yeah. I do want to get into asking you kind of like how Waterfall came to be and why you developed it. But there is, for any new listeners or for new players at all, like there's kind of a deep history in terms of where Stepmania came from and how it evolved into what it is today. So I'm going to try my best to, in like a few minutes, hopefully without stumbling over my own words, try to give you a history of where things started. So, because it's important to understand that before going into discussion of Waterfall. So to be as quick as possible, ITG was officially released in 2004, but then there was a Roxor versus Konami lawsuit that happened in 2005. But before that, there was an arcade patch released for ITG2 in arcades called R21, which that was the patch that kind of opened the community to creating and playing custom content in a much more mainstream way, which is something we did for many years. If you didn't have an arcade setup, Stepmania 3.9 or 3.95, and then also OpenITG is what people used on personal setups, which kind of recreated the ITG experience as far as like timing windows, judgments, and life bars for your home setup. So as we move forward into the modern era, because Roxor was kind of sued by Konami, there was no official body kind of governing what ITG was, so the community was kind of required to take this game into their own hand and customize the game into how they wanted it to be played. And so from that, there were kind of different disciplines of the game that were created. The main 3 I think of are kind of like technical play, stamina play, and then mods. But I'm sure there's like other sub-disciplines within that. each of those sub communities had their own needs, and so each of those sub communities also did their best to fill their own needs the best they could. And so at this point, the community is kind of entirely driving the content that they provide for each other, which is actually like one of my favorite aspects of the game. That it's very much like driven by the community for the community. So just briefly to like for reference, Stamina players, for example, they largely play what is originally considered ITG, still using the original life bars, still using original judgments. The only thing that's different, obviously, is they're not playing any of the official songs from ITG 1 and 2. They've modded some other things into the game for quality of life purposes, such as like the density graphs and the measure counters in Simply Love. But largely, other than the chart, still playing kind of ITG at its base. Technical players, on the other hand, kind of develop their own. They just have like all sorts of things that they developed on their own based on their needs. They've developed their own charts and meta around writing those charts. This was already something that was happening a long time ago, but the charting styles and the writing has matured a lot since then. They were unhappy with some of the timing windows, so decents and way-offs, or the slang term is just to call them the boys. The boys. And I think I'll link a pretty informative video that Jeremy made about the boys, but we decided to disable those as well, kind of like as a quality of life thing, just to avoid what we consider to be hardware errors. They felt like things like judgment weights didn't accurately represent who the better player was. Like the fact that 1 miss is equal to 17 excellence, like can end up in some pretty laughable situations. So even for like tournaments that use custom weights, I think some people felt like the ITG Fantastic window wasn't tight enough. Like it wasn't representative of like the ultimate timing potential of the players that were playing it. So FA Plus kind of became a thing to play on halved timing windows. And then even on top of all of that, while all this is happening, Quietly Turning releases Simply Love for Stepmania 5, which not just like became a theme, but was kind of like a platform for our entire community. So if we look at it now, looking back at like what the modern tech community has created, I feel like it's almost hard to even call what we're playing ITG, because we're not playing the official charts, we're not using the weights, we disabled 2 of the judgments, we kind of added an additional time window on top of Fantastics, and now that we're playing on Stepmania 5, it's not like we're playing on a box or open ITG. Like there's also no kind of consistent hardware or software standard that we're playing on. And so with all that said, I think Waterfall is an interesting development because it kind of takes what we've already been doing and kind of takes it off the deep end, saying, there's no reason at this point that we can't just like let go of this old idea of what like ITG was and just move on to something entirely new. Does that sound like pretty accurate?
Yeah, I think that's as good of a summary as you'll probably get. I mean, there's a lot of details, but that's a good like high level explanation, I would say. Yeah.
So I think leading into that, I would say kind of why did you start developing Waterfall? What were kind of the main goals that you were trying to accomplish?
So to start off, I'll say so the beginning of it, when it conceptually like first started out, was it came from a time when I was playing mostly other games like besides ITG, because it was like when I just moved here to Seattle, if anyone doesn't know. I didn't have access to ITG and I was going to round 1 a lot, so it was like a combination of seeing things that other games were doing and just kind of like relating them to ITG, which was still my preferred game. I just didn't have like access to it, and just like thinking about like recognizing that ITG can be improved in a lot of ways if we think outside the box with it. And going off of that, in November of 2019, I wrote this whole thing about like and I posted it on Twitter. It was like this, basically it was just this like this hypothetical kind of like, I called it like proposing a new standard or game mode for ITG. And I would say it's not that useful to read now because Waterfall kind of is the expression of that thing that I wrote. But like, it was basically just before I had even worked on anything, just being like, um, it was just pointing out the things that you kind of just touched on about how like, okay, we're not really playing ITG anymore. And if I'm to go any even further, it's that ITG is not actually that good of a game when you look at it in a lot of ways. I mean, it might have been when it came out, but like DDR has progressed in a lot of ways that like have been unable to happen because of the fact that people are sticking to like exactly what ITG, like the way that that game worked, you know. And I felt like that was holding the game back in a lot of ways, and I felt like it was not really even necessary because there's no real reason that we need to stick to ITG, especially if we're all playing Stepmania 5. We could all just agree on some other set of metrics, you know, if we wanted. Like Simply Love is already enforcing a set of metrics that are not even the norm for Stepmania as it is. So for like when you install Stepmania 5, you know, so my um the whole point was basically like if we can rethink a lot of things, and here's my proposal of like what would be a better sort of rule set for this game. And like I went on about it, but and then when I started working on it, it was basically just um it was what I was calling at the time. It was like it was just like a hack for Simply Love, basically, where and I called it experimental mode, which was um I just uh I just like, you know, Simply Love has, if you dig into like the way the theme is built, it's not terribly hard to like add another selection to the where you pick like ITG or FA plus, like to just add another game mode. So I was like, I'm just gonna mess with this. I'm just gonna try some stuff. So I called it experimental mode, and I actually tried a bunch of different sets of windows at first. I think 15 was I always I like that was the top window from the start, but I for the other windows they went through a few iterations because like I tried like 25 instead of 30 at first, and I think I had like 40 for the third window at one point, but like so I tried a bunch of things before I landed on something I liked. And then yeah, that just kept kind of going. I was just like getting more and more ideas, and then it kind of grew into me deciding I was just going to make my own theme that would hopefully stand apart from Simply Love and not just be this like hack on top of it. Um, so that's more or less like the origin of how it started. So yeah, I would. That's I don't know if you had like another question there, but
Who's the first person to call it gamer mode?
I'm pretty sure it was Alex, and the reason I'm definitely sure it was Alex because he was one of the first people I actually talked to about it. Like I talked to him a lot, but like so I think like he was one of the first people I sent it to, and like there was just one point in a conversation where he was like, "I'm gonna call it gamer mode." So that, and then, I don't know, it's like little things like that. It's like the history of things like that is usually not very exciting. It's just like something innocuous, and then it's just like, oh, I guess that's a thing now.
Yeah.
Which is not, it's also not unlike the name Waterfall. It's like almost the exact same scenario. It's like, yeah.
Actually, yeah. Where did that name come from?
So it was almost like I said, almost the same thing. When I started like when I was like talking about it was also talking to Alex, and I was talking to him about like ideas for making a theme, and there was just one point where he just randomly was like, can we have a waterfall in the background on the title screen or something? And like it was something like that, and I was like, okay. And like and then so the thing is like I needed something to call it, and even if not just like something to refer to it as like when talking about it colloquially, but like something to internally call it, like all my variables and shit in the code. So I just took the name Waterfall and just ran with it. Like that was all it was, really.
I think Alex is also the source of why the tech pack prickly pear is like popping pack is named what it is. Because I think it was just
More
like
or less,
I
yeah.
think it was just like Chief Skittles and Alex kind of like laughing about a Facebook sticker pack at like some tournament, and that's
Yeah.
like the entire story of it. Yeah. I think Um, you wrote a lot of your ideas in a README, which can be found in the themes folder, but you've kind of summarized four larger goals of Waterfall being these things. The first is encouraging exploration of a new game environment. Two is seamlessness between playable game environments. Three is improving the game experience by adding metagame elements. And fourth is offering another option for a quality theme for the community to use. Is this something that we can just kind of like go through one by one?
Yeah, I can go through them one by one. One thing I will say is that this was in the why did you get this far section of the README that was called Other Ramblings. And I kind of made it that way because it was less like the README first and foremost was supposed to be like a technical reference, but like at the end of it, I just kind of wrote a bunch of stuff about like I don't know, it was a little more like unfiltered and just kind of like stuff I was thinking about at the time. Um, and that section, so the specific like stuff you're talking about was stuff that I wrote before the release of version 0.5, which was like the first release of it. And I wouldn't say it's exactly outdated, but it's I would say that it's stuff that it's stuff that I was thinking about at the time that I wrote it, which was a long time ago now. And there's a lot more information, on like more people have been using it, more stuff has happened, and I've obviously been thinking about it more. And I'm kind of always, like adapting how I feel about any given thing based on what's happening or like how people feel or whatever. So
Yeah.
with that out of the way, those specific points where I would say that the first one is the most important. It was like again um and we'll get into this because I'll get into this like later, but this just kind of that I feel like ITG is not that good anymore as a game. And so I was like, I wanted to just be like, try using this and see if it like, if you think it's better or like, I just want to like encourage the idea that like we could be playing a better game. So that was like the sort of high level of the first one.
So yeah, I would say you were saying that ITG is maybe not that good of a game. What are some things that you feel like are kind of outdated or bad about ITG in its original state?
Yeah, so a lot of it has to do with what I would like ways that so like people have still been playing DDR, right? Like, but ITG has been this like it's been progressing like in an insane amount on a content basis. Like the step charting for ITG has gotten insane, and anyone like in the community will tell you that. Like both tech and stamina, like yeah, but on a actual like gameplay side, it's completely stagnant because we're all just like sticking to this particular thing. And like I said, the fact that I was not playing ITG as much and I was actually playing DDR a decent amount during the time that I conceptualized it. And there was a lot of things that I was like, okay, like people have gotten used to the Marvelous window and it actually feels pretty good. So, and that's not to say like yeah, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but like my point wasn't to just make the game like DDR exactly. Like I wasn't like, oh, I want to make the game have the Marvelous window. I wasn't trying to make ITG just be DDR. It was more just taking inspiration from things that had progressed that I thought were good about DDR. But anyway, yeah. So like, I think that with how good players have gotten, the timing windows are a bit lopsided with ITG. Like the Fantastic window is arguably too big because people are already good at Marvelous. And then beyond that, like, and this is talking about like the like when you reach a skill ceiling in ITG where once you're at the like most competitive level, it's like you're basically just going for a quad at that point. Like that's the achievement. It's like the Fantastic window is big enough to the point where like you're getting a quad or you're counting excellence. And like, anything below that feels like you just fucked up. So and I don't know, it just felt really lopsided to me because in DDR I could finish certain songs with like a couple greats and still feel like I did something. You know, I still feel like I improved something or whatever, you know. So this better balancing of the achievement structure was a big thing. The skill ceiling being like it just um yeah, like to like it feels like you get to a point where what you're attacking is not that meaningful anymore. Um, so that was one thing. I also think so I guess the other thing is to that end, you know, obviously FA plus was a thing for a while, but I've never really liked FA plus for a lot of reasons. Um, to summarize, like there's this disconnect. Like so, I've never liked the idea of having two top windows that have the same name in like any game. Like I don't think it's good in 2DX, and I don't think it's good with FA plus. Um, it's like this weird disconnect on what the actual target you're aiming for is, and I don't like that because it's like you want the game to tell you you got 100% if you got all fantastics, but you also are kind of going for a better thing than that, but you still want to call it 100%. Um, and it's just like this confusing thing that doesn't mean that much. And again, like I always looked at FA plus as more of a thing that was like how like okay, you got that 100%, but how like tight were your fantastics? But the thing about that is that we already have better mechanisms for kind of analyzing that question. Like we have the timing distribution where you can see it, you can see a visual of it, you can see your mean timing error and all that. And I feel like if you want to get more granular than the 100% score target, like those are much better things to do, like to analyze your actual raw judgment data. But aside from that, I also think that 12.5 milliseconds is not a good window size because it doesn't feel good as a primary target. It feels like you try to hit it when the notes are easy, and then you don't care enough. As long as you're still getting fantastics, once the chart gets hard, then you're fine. So it's like I don't know. It doesn't feel real to me. The other thing about that is that 12.5 was never a number that made sense in the first place. Where that number comes from is that it's half the top window of what Stompers had, which is also an outdated thing now because Stompers is what eventually became Rhythm Horizon, and that has different windows now. But at the time, it had a 25 millisecond perfect window, and the like flashing perfect was the 12.5, which is what became FA plus. So there's no that's like the other thing is that I just don't think FA plus was ever like a good way to address that issue because even if you make it like not like if you make it 15, it still has the problem of the windows themselves being lopsided because now you have 12.5 and 23 which or like 15 and 23 which are way too close together and they don't feel meaningfully different enough. And then like excellent is still like way off the deep end somewhere. So like you still feel like garbage if you got an excellent if you're at the higher level of play.
Yeah,
So
FA Plus just felt really weird because there was nothing punishing you for kind of dropping into the other fantastic window. Like
yeah.
you
So
get 50-50 blue and white and still get 100%.
so that's like maybe a needlessly long ramble about why I didn't like FA plus as a way to address the skill ceiling problem. But then there's other things like also, you know, like I think the decent window is one of the biggest crimes of ITG. Like a lot of people just they'll lump decents and way offs into as like the same thing as like they're both bad or whatever. Like stamina players know like the way off window at the very least has a purpose and like they still stick to it. And there's a good reason for that. I'm not going to go further into it, but the point is like the point I want to make more is that the decent window has no reason to exist. It's like it's not only like this weird middle ground between whether it's like whether it's like punishing or not punishing, but it's also really confusing about what it actually does because it breaks your combo like the number you see on the screen, but it actually contributes to your combo as far as like regaining life is concerned. So there's just so much, I don't know, like the decent window, just like you could basically, my point is, if you wanted to add another window to ITG, to me, the better way to do it would be to remove the decent window and keep way off and just make way off really big, because people who are going to turn off the boys anyway will just turn it off. But people who want that punishing window for stamina purposes can just play with one window that is punishing, like, because it's not like you're trying to hit it in the first place. It's like, yeah. Anyway, and then I kind of touched on this, like the life bar in ITG is another thing where I don't think the life bar is actually something I think is not terribly offensive. It has some ideas that are mechanically good, but it's just too confusing with how it actually evaluates those things. Like I said, the decent window is one of the main problems with it, because it tells you it breaks your combo, but the life bar doesn't think so. Um, so yeah, things like that are the areas I was looking at where I was like, okay, if we just rethink all of this stuff, we can make all of it better. That's kind of like where I'm coming from.
Yeah, so I really enjoy Waterfall. Obviously I've had to use it for ECFA 2021, but I also tried it for the first time at Chief Skittles' house back in December and had like a blast playing on it. So I'm kind of all like on that progressive boat of, forget whatever ICG used to be. I'm totally okay just like adopting this new like progressive idea. But I know that, ITG has been around since 2004. I know that you've probably received a lot of criticisms about kind of like trying to break the status quo. Like what kind of criticism have you received around that? And what have been your responses?
So I honestly have not gotten, like, I don't have like a way to say that sounds like, I don't know, like I haven't gotten that meaningful of feedback on that, if I'm being completely honest. Like it's either way in one direction or way in the other direction, as far like like the majority of what I've gotten. It's like it's either people like messaging me saying like, I don't know why anyone would play ITG anymore. Like some people actually say that to me, but there's also some people who just say like, I don't know why this exists. And it's like, okay, like you you're not invalid for thinking either of those things, but neither of them are terribly like meaningful as far as like, I don't know, like as far as a way that I can actually respond to it, like,
I feel like
so
people
I don't know, I
should.
don't.
I feel like people should listen to what you have to say and understand why you're doing what you're doing before they kind of throw feedback back at
and
you.
and I mean, I think the biggest thing I will say from the side of people who are more hesitant about it is just that they're like, and again, this is not to like, this isn't to like say they're wrong or something. It's just, this is what I think the sensation is that they're not, they're comfortable in what has been established in for a really long time, like for decades at this point. um it's like it's natural to just want to stay in that comfort zone, I guess, and to just be like, and also to worry that like, oh, if we do this, then it's gonna like splinter the community more and stuff. I don't think that that point is particularly strong, mainly because it's already pretty segmented, like between, so you have like okay, I'm someone who is really enthusiastic about Stamina and FA, and those kind of have their own communities to a degree, and I don't think that's like a huge problem. It's just like kind of is what it is. Some people really like Stamina, some people really like FA. So to me, it's not a huge deal if like some people end up really liking Waterfall and some people end up really not liking it, and then they have their own sort of subsets of a community. I don't see that as a huge problem. It's just more people being interested in more different things. Um, so yeah, but anyway, the point is, I think some people are just worried that like it's difficult to get like a whole community on board with a big change like this, because it is a big change, and I'm not like underselling that. It's like it's a big ask to be like, oh, everyone just let's do this other thing actually, like I acknowledge that that's a big it's like I wasn't expecting everyone to be on board, if I'm being
Yeah.
honest.
So one of your other goals of Waterfall was kind of seamlessness between playable game environments. A big feature of Waterfall has been, you talked about this before, which is kind of simultaneous tracking of your standard mode judgments, which is masterful, awesome, etc. And also tracking ITG judgments and scores. So would you say that tracking ITG judgments parallel to like the standard judgments, do you feel like that's kind of helped adoption?
I think it has to some degree, and that was more or less the goal of it, if I'm being honest. So actually, to go back to when I first started, with like what was experimental mode before Waterfall, I actually had like the underlying workings of that I built into that mod because of like basically for the purpose at the time it was like I feel like more people will be willing to try this if they can at least get some feedback on what their ITG performance was, because I knew a lot of people were not going to want to just like jump into this other mode and you play a new set of windows and a new scoring weights and all that stuff, like, and it's easy to feel lost with like whether a score was actually good or not, or so I wanted, from the start to at least give people something to like compare against. And I think that was I do think that helped bring some people in, as especially with, I think, with ECFA, because that's another thing we'll get into, but ECFA 2021, just like using the waterfall system, I think a lot of people are more on board with that because of the fact that they can play ITG mode and still see their score. So I think that benefits it in that way. So I would say it definitely has eased the adoption to some degree.
Yeah, so I feel like tracking those things together has helped adoption. It's helped me a lot to be able to. I've loved accidentally getting quads playing on standard mode and then like switching panes and seeing that there's a quad. As far as code is concerned, do you feel like that's kind of caused its own bundle of problems trying to track both at the same time?
Yeah, so that's actually a at least for me, like hopefully it's more invisible to the average user than it is to me, but like that's it definitely comes with some pretty major technical hurdles. Just getting it to work the way it does was a pretty big task for me, and like I was surprised that I got it to work as well as it does. But even still, like I mentioned, I went on that whole thing about seamlessness and how I wanted, if I was going to have ITG mode, I want it to be seamless. There are some ways in which that's still not completely satisfied for me. Like note skins are a big one. I had to make my own versions of other note skins that basically reload different actors if you're using ITG mode, because now that ITG judgments are not the native judgments, the note skins are independently responding to the native judgments, so I have to make them not do that, and I have to make them load different actors based on the judgments that you're getting for ITG. And like that's a whole other thing, because it comes from the fact that note skins are not really controllable from a theme. So it's like I had to code that all into note skins, which is a bit annoying because it means you can't use whatever note skin you happen to like or whatever. Well, you can, but there'll be visual discrepancies that can be annoying to some
Wait a
people.
second. Is that a contributing factor to why holds tween like really weirdly?
No, well, yes and no. It is in the sense that the way they behave that way came about as a result of me having to change the note skins, but um not in the sense that it's a result of what they're actually doing for the ITG. So to if you don't mind me just like going in on that a little bit, because I will say that I do want to like patch that up a little bit and make the holds look a little nicer. But the reason that happens is because when I first like coded the note skins that way to where they respond to ITG judgments properly, um, the thing that I noticed, because of the way that it's working, it's just loading the ITG actors instead of the ones that it normally loads. But a byproduct of that is that it never loads the normal the normal actor that responds to finishing a hold is actually the tier 2 like tap explosion. So like the excellent explosion. And because it's never loading that exact actor, there was no like command for that happening at all. And I observed that while I was playing because it was something I wasn't thinking about at the time, but then like I was playing and I was like, oh, there's no hold explosions. And it was like when I was playing ITG. But then while I was playing it that way, I was like, I kind of like it better with no hold explosions and because if you again, like I said, it's the window 2 tap explosion, which having the yellow like awesome color flash when you finish a hold looked way worse than it looks if you have like white or even the excellent color.
It's deceiving.
So like seeing that like bright yellow was always like, oh, that looks ugly to me. So I was like, I'm just gonna have no explosions for either of them, and like that was a decision I made because of that observation I made. But that said, I do want to have like a unique actor. So rather than using the tier 2 tap explosion, I want to have like a unique actor for a hold explosion that is not like, that's just kind of a sort of like a simpler little like flash that indicates you finished the hold, because that would mitigate the hold issue that exists now, where like you hit a really short hold and it like just kind of goes away really abruptly and it looks bad. So yeah, the other thing that I would say is a big thing that at least some people have expressed concern about, and it's not unfounded to have this concern, is that because of the fact that I'm like recording scores completely differently from how Stepmania does, and I'm not using ITG's native judgments and stuff. If you get scores for your ITG, like your ITG scores, and you can see them all in the waterfall theme, but like if you want to switch back to another theme, all those ITG scores don't transfer because they're all in my file and not in stats.xml. And even if like there's like, yeah, it's like if I wanted to go that far, there's like it's like I don't see it as within the scope of what I want to do to like try to hijack the XML file and like inject XML into the stats file when Stepmania is already writing to that file from the engine. It just seems like a nightmare to me. But anyway, that's another way where I think that it kind of falls short from my goal on that. So um that has caused some worry for me in terms of like whether I want to even have ITG mode in the theme. But I can maybe talk about that later. But yeah.
So on third on the list of goals with Waterfall, you have improving the game experience by adding metagame elements. And I actually love this probably the most. Like I just love additional granularity and achievements for like getting masteries, awesome combos. It's actually something I was really upset with in we both play Sound Voltex, right?
Yeah.
Sound Voltex Vivid Wave, for example, kind of like rewards you for getting like the 99% score. But then there's nothing between 99% and 100% for like, 99.2, 99.4, unless you get a full combo or like a perfect combo. So I think Waterfall has kind of done a good job of, if you full comboed something, maybe there's a higher tier of a full combo you can accomplish, or
Yeah.
you still have like quote unquote letter grades. Well, actually, they are letters, right? They don't like
Yeah,
arbitrarily
yeah,
switch into.
there's grades.
They
Yeah.
don't they don't arbitrarily switch into stars.
Yeah, I part of that, so yeah, I mean, I don't want to go on for too long, but like the ITG's grades I didn't like for a lot of reasons, but the main one, putting aside the stars, was just that there are too many. Like there's like 17 grade tiers in ITG, which is like once you're below 90, like, and this isn't to like sound elitist or anything, but I just think that once you're below 90, you don't need that many grades anymore. Like when you're coming up from that level, like you see much faster like it's a lot easier to improve a score from 76% than it is from 94%. It's like so I don't know. I just wanted like simpler, easy to understand at a glance ranges of scores for the grades. That was like a major thing for me.
Yeah, what I want to highlight is that I think it's cool that you found a way to kind of provide additional detail and understanding how good someone's achievement is without necessarily needing to compromise like understanding of the content being played, because it's a pretty big problem right now where kind of like the double-edged sword of, yeah, we have a lot of content that's being released by the community and it's all insane and really well written, but there is almost like so much content that people will look at a score and be like, I've never seen this chart before in my life. So to have those kind of more granular achievements, kind of, maybe you still don't know what the chart is, but you can have more of an understanding of how good something was just because those achievements are like more granular.
Yeah. Um, Especially like, and one thing that I'll say that, like I've mentioned that um, like being influenced from like other games, like even though I don't really play 2DX, but I like from seeing people post scores on 2DX was basically what inspired the achievements pane on the results screen, because I was like, oh man, this game, like why is this game doing this but like no other Bomani game? Like it tells you like your improvements on every little thing, and I was like, this is awesome, like I want my game to do this. So I was like, I'm gonna like record these all separately and have like a view where you can see like which thing improved or didn't improve or whatever. Like, and I think that turned out pretty well. Yeah.
Are there any other kind of metagame additions you're still looking to add?
So I would say a lot of what I wanted is pretty much there, is at least in terms of like the underlying workings. Um, Anything I would add for like in the future, I would say is more in, it's like it's less certain whether I'll end up actually, it's like more in the realm of like I have ideas for things, but I don't know if those ideas are ever gonna like be like actually made into something that exists. But like I mentioned in the README a little, I think how I would like to see some kind of like something kind of like the Dan system. So that was and it would be like sort of community curated courses that would be built into the theme, and it would use, this was like the idea I had was that I was going to basically build my own course mode, which was not marathon mode, but it was like it'll have more flexibility for like you play a song and it's basically just using the regular dance mode, but you see like the results screen for each song, but it has like a menu timer between each one, kind of like what the skill analyzer does in Sound Voltex. So it'd be kind of like that. Maybe you'd be able to adjust your mods in between each one. I haven't fully thought this through again. um, but yeah, stuff like that where like that was one thing where I wanted to expand on. But as far as um, what's there is pretty much what like the biggest ideas I had with that exception. I'll say that the way stuff is communicated, definitely I wanted to like flesh out more, because a lot of the screens are stuff I still consider really temporary. They're kind of just like, here was the layout of Simply Love, and I'm just like throwing stuff on top of it, which I'm not really satisfied with. Um, I wanted like more stuff to be visible on the song menu, for example. So you might have a better view of like your different achievements on a chart from the song menu in a better looking menu that suits my theme more, is what I mean. Um, and then another thing, another again, like another big crazy idea I had that I don't know if I'll ever actually do, but I wanted to have like a view stats sort of screen where like maybe from the main menu you go to like view stats and you just like pick your profile, and like there's just a bunch of statistics based on all your achievements that you can look at, like maybe like how many masteries you have, how many of this or that, you can pick any chart and see, you could see like your best performance down to like what the results screen would have had on it and stuff like that. And like this is all stuff that's like pretty much possible to do within what I've already made as far as the underlying systems. It's just like it would be a lot to actually implement all that stuff.
So fourth in your goals for Waterfall is that you just wanted to offer another option for a quality theme for people to use, and the biggest thing is that it's something that's not simply love. So just like preface, I think you've mentioned in the README that Simply Love both Lara's version for Stepmania and OpenITG, but also Quietly Turning's version for SM5, has kind of been a blessing and a curse for our game. Like a blessing because it's actually like it's insane. It's so feature rich and has become a platform for the game we play now. But maybe it's almost too good. Like people don't make other themes because Simply Love has like everything that we need. But also a curse because some people just don't like the Simply Love aesthetic. Like I love it personally just because it's feature rich, but I know other people think it's maybe too dull or too plain, and just the plainness of it could like draw some people away from playing the game. So I guess my two questions to you are: do you feel like making Waterfall a more like visually distinct experience is more of a stretch goal, or like where do you prioritize that? And also, do you ever see Simply Love moving in a direction where kind of more visual flair is added to the theme?
So, for the first question, so this again, like, goes into what I would say, like, at least as of right now, what I like the plans for the future of the theme are less certain. Uh, Maybe like half a year ago, I would have said like it was a pretty big priority to make it more visually distinct, and I still like want that in the end, but it stretch goal might be a little bit better of a description at this point, just because. So a big part of it is that I'm not an artist at all, so like that's obviously a hurdle. Like I'm not really very good at making graphics. As a side note, the Optimus font is like my crowning graphical achievement for the theme. That's like the one thing that I like spent time on and was like, I'm gonna try to make this look as good as I can. So yeah. But yeah, I don't know. It's like I want it to like ultimately not just be something that you look at and it's like, oh, where do I get that Simply Love mod? Like that was like something I specifically didn't want from the start. And I would have, if not for the fact that I wanted people to actually try the new metrics like as quickly as, or like as like I wanted people to like actually see it and try it. And if not for that, I would have probably not even released anything of it until it was more visually distinct. But again, like it's a lot of work to like overhaul graphics. Like it's a huge amount of work. So um I don't really know where that's going to go, but it's something I'd ideally like. So as far as Simply Love going in a direction that's more um like visually flashy, I guess was the question. Um I I don't really so I don't I can't really speak to what it will do. I feel like I don't think that it should. I think Simply Love is like Simply Love's aesthetic, like it is what it is, I guess. Like it's simple because that's the way it was intended to be. And like if it if it tried to be, if it I don't know, if future features tried to make it more visually flashy, I think it would just conflict with the aesthetic that it already has. Um, so I don't know. Like my suggestion would be to like keep playing to that strength, because there's a lot of people that do. I actually like Simply Love as well. I really
I
like the
love
way it
Simply
looks.
Love.
So yeah,
Yeah.
so like just for the record, I think it looks really good. So like I think it should just keep playing to that. Like there's people that really like it for that reason, and it should keep playing to that is what I would say.
I know kind of in the early stages of Waterfall and experimental mode, some of you were concerned about was kind of community buy-in, because it does take a lot of effort to kind of break 15 years of status quo of playing ITG. But it looks like ECFA 2021 kind of took you in open arms. Is this something that you had to fight for, or is that something like they reached out to you for? Why do you think they chose Waterfall versus continuing with Simply Love?
So I one thing I'll say is that for ECFA in general, I actually originally reached out to Kyle for using the theme just for the purpose of ECFA 7. And that was what, when I released version 0.5, that was like what it was leading towards, was using it there. But that was more just supposed to be like a theme for the live event, and it wasn't um, it wasn't using the waterfall like game mode at the time, so it was still not like, oh, we're using this new thing just yet. It was more just like, oh, like we can have a theme around the event, kind of like what ECS does, how they have like a theme that's built around it. So that was what I approached Kyle around for ECFA 7, but of course that got canceled. And then, but later on, Kyle reached out to me about like just moving, just like using Waterfall all in ECFA 2021. And he originally messaged me about it, and I think that was in October. And um he basically had some basic requirements that were relating to communicating the scoring system. And um so this was before I was like involved in actually in the event at all. So I this was like more or less like when I learned the event existed. Um and so I didn't know much about it at all, other than like he had some things he wanted to use with the theme, and he wanted like he was wondering if I could build some things into it. And then a little later, Oliver and Mick Chibi started messaging me with like certain more specific things about it. And one thing I'll say, just as a tangent, just because I know this is focused on me and the fact that I made Waterfall and everything, Oliver actually started with the integration of the ECFA 2021 features. So like the underlying stuff for the song wheel items, how it injects the points into the song title, and also the like underlying code for the tech radar. That was actually what Oliver did before I was even on the team. So just credit where credit is due there. Um, uh, so yeah, but eventually I was like, well, this will be easier if I was like, do you have like a group or something where this is like all being discussed or whatever? And then that was how I got pulled in as like just like a one of the contributors for the event. So yeah, it was not really something I had to fight for. It was like they came up to the decision of wanting to use Waterfall on their own, and then they kind of approached me about it. So I thought that was cool. I also know that Kyle had at least expressed interest in, like, he had liked the idea of using a new set of windows already. So like I didn't expect that they were going to do it for ECFA 2021, but I knew that Kyle at least was interested in the idea. So yeah.
And then what were kind of some specific things that you did to gear Waterfall towards ECFA?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that I did for the actual event itself. So the one thing is the sort of the current aesthetic that it has, as far as like the background and stuff, like that was originally the artwork for ECFA 7 is what was used for the background. So that was like where that came from. But moving towards ECFA 2021, it was mostly just making sure as much of the scoring system is communicated as possible. So we knew, like, so there were some basic requirements that the team had for me, like when I started, which was basically, we want you to be able to see the tech radar. Like we want like to show it on the song menu. And then we want you to be able to see how many points any chart is worth. So that was like a big thing, like just building that whole like UI for that. And doing all the calculations on the back end for the score, which went through some revisions. But then, so that was like the most basic requirement, was showing the number of, showing the points, showing the points in the tech radar on the song menu and showing the points you earned on the results screen. Those were like the basic requirements that were expected in the first place. And then the idea of like tracking your scores um and being able to view each individual one on that like separate screen, and like saving it to a file so that it can like so that you can see all that like in one place. That was like pretty much entirely my idea. Like that was like something that as I was working on the other stuff for it, I was like, and I was talking to them about it. I was like, if I have time, I would like to do this whole other thing because like I just think that this would be cool to be able to see all this because we have like this whole system for how your scores are totaled and stuff, but that might not be super obvious to people who are just playing. So I was like, it'd be cool if you could like see it all in one screen or something. And I was like, so that was kind of just my like side project thing that I managed to get done before release. So I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. Yeah.
As far as the kind of present and future of Waterfall, how are you feeling?
So presently, it's been cool to see a lot of people using it. Like obviously ECFA 2021 was I think a good introduction for it since like a lot of people are using it now. There's been a lot of people giving their own thoughts on it and whatever. Um, so I've alluded to a few times, either both in this conversation and outside, about how the future of it is less certain in the sense that when I first set out to build it, it was like this hugely ambitious thing where I was like, I have all these ideas and these are all like what I want to do. And it's like as much as I'd like to still like fulfill as much of that as I can, but there's also some amount of how I've been sort of changing how I feel about certain things, especially just how long I want to keep working on it is a major thing. So there's certain things that are a little bit discouraging, I'll say. Um, so I've talked about how, okay, I'll give like one example. I've talked about how I want it to be like visually distinct, right? And like that was like a major goal that I had, and I want it to be like my theme, right? So there's some degree to which like when people use it, um, the things they're focused on are more like just kind of like that it's different from Simply Love and that they want it to just be like Simply Love. And that is a definite thing that people have like when people use it and they ask like, is there a way to get the early late indicator to be like on the sides of the judgment, for example? Like that's just one example as just off the top of my head. And it's like that was a specific decision that I made that was like I just want it to be this way. And I mean there's other reasons for it. It was like, you know, I wanted to detach it because it allows more flexibility for a lot of other ideas that I have. But when I see questions like that, you know, when the vibe I get, and again, it's not just that one thing. It's like it's like there's a sort of bigger picture and with the way that it makes me feel in terms of continuing to work on it because it's like um so again, like I kind of lost my train of thought, but so what I'm getting at is okay, if you imagine like being in the position that I'm in, right? And I have like a bunch of ideas, but they're all in my head, right? Nobody knows what I'm thinking about. And but they are also things that take a long time to do. And like um I could be spending that time doing anything. And like I could be spending it making something that's not a Stepmania theme. Um and when I see things like the feedback that is basically giving me a vibe that like people just aren't into the idea of wanting to just like try something different, or they just want something to be like Simply Love. It's like I don't want my creation to just be constantly in this like shadow of Simply Love, where like every time I do anything with it, the the comment that I'm gonna get is how it compares to Simply Love, or how to make it like Simply Love again, or it's like, because again, like, to to try to like drive home what I'm getting at. It's like, this is a project that, when I think about all the things I would like to do with it, it's like multiple years of work, like at least like 2 years out from being like what I would really like, the as far as the bigger picture I would like. And I'm just like there are other things that I want to do creatively, if I'm being honest. So to go on a little bit of a side note, it's like a side tangent. It's um um making just developing games is an interest that I have in general, and I feel like making the theme has been the closest I've come to actually realizing that. But at the same time, it's become less satisfying because I feel like I'm constantly doing something that is not completely mine, for that reason that I've mentioned already. So it's like I just feel like if I were, instead of making Waterfall, for example, if I were making something that's completely my own, where I'm just like, I'm just going to make my own game and it's not attached to like Stepmania or whatever, then I'd have more room to like do things that I want to do that would not be subject to just people with these preconceived ideas of the way that it should be. So that's kind of like what's going through my head. It's not like out of malice or anything. And it's not out of like, it's not because I think like dance game players are stubborn and, oh, I hate them or whatever. It's like, look, when I set out to make Waterfall, one of the big goals was that like I wanted to like try to redefine the game if I could and make it better. And that might be, to try to do that on like a whole community scale is probably overreaching. And um eh, so, and if it turns out that that's not just what people want in the long run, then fair enough. But it's just like, again, it's hard for me to stay committed to a multiple year long project when I could be focusing on other things. But anyway, I don't want that to sound too ranty, because I still, again, I still do want to have some kind of a finished version of it. It's just that I feel like I'm probably going to be making some concessions on certain ideas that I have, or that I've had. Um, so more than likely, I feel like it's either going to be like one of two things. It's either going to be that like I commit to having something that I call a finished version out by like the end of this year, or um, or it's going to continue to be kind of a side project beyond that time frame, and it'll just, when I do things, I do things. I don't know. But yeah, so I don't want it to sound like I'm completely disinterested or anything. I just want to like say where I'm coming from, as far as like how um sometimes it's hard to stay motivated when you think about how much you have ahead of you, and what you'll actually gain from it, and what you could be doing instead. So that's kind of, yeah.
No, I think I feel you a lot. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the general idea is that you have this greater vision of what you want your kind of finished product to be, where it's not even really a theme, right? Like, it really is just like a game, and Simply Love for now just happens to be the base of what you're using to build off of. And so some of the criticisms you get, or like the requests you get, isn't really acknowledging the things that you've done successfully and have done well, but it's just kind of, those people are just kind of looking at what's missing from what I want, or what's
Yeah,
missing
exactly.
from what
And
Simply Love currently does, rather than giving you credit for things that are being done well.
yeah, and again, I want to say that like there is merit to that in the first place, because again, there's something that I'm already self-conscious of, is the fact that I released it looking kind of like a Simply Love mod. So I don't even think it's like the most outrageous thing to look at it and be like, "Oh, where'd this thing go?" Right? It's like it's just like, it's a huge task for me to like make it more distinct. And I don't know if, again, it's like if every time I make one of those decisions, like um, another example is, not to go too far into it, but another example is that I don't actually like very much, at least for my own, like for the purpose of making my own theme, I don't actually like the idea to be able to just drop your own judgment font in at all. I would probably stick to having a few set that are made for the theme, and you can pick ones that fit the aesthetic of like what was built for the theme, and those would be the selections. And that's, again, like that's something that people who are really used to Simply Love would probably think as like, they'll probably complain about that. And it's like, I don't know, it's like if every time I make that kind of a decision, it's subject to this scrutiny of how like, oh, like they could just play Simply Love, then I just feel like, it's hard to feel like what I'm doing is actually like, I don't know, is actually like it's less satisfying to actually continue with what I'm doing, I don't know.
I feel like that's kind of like the blessing and curse that we talked about, right? Where like Simply Love is almost too good for its own good. So now like other themes just kind of live in the shadow of Simply Love. Like I mean there was definitely like really cool themes out there visually, and they're kind of out there doing their own thing, but I think people are a little too short-sighted, and they just say, well, Simply Love does this and this other theme doesn't, so why would I ever use it? It's like a very narrow-minded way of kind of looking at other themes.
Yeah, and another thing I want to clarify too is that like when I talk about things like the moving the early late ticks, for example, I don't want that to be misinterpreted as like I'm trying to take options away or something, because the main issue that I have is not that you have the choice to move it. It's that I don't think it looks good being attached to the judgment font. Like that's the issue to me. And that was one of the decisions I made where I was just like, I think it looks better if I detach it. And in a more fully realized version of the theme, I actually already wanted to flesh out more options. Like I wanted there to be more options for like where to position the ticks, and or whether you use the text or the error bar or whatever. Like ideally there'd be more options for that, not less. It's just that like it's just it's more like the way that the feedback is expressed. It gives me a vibe of, this is not Simply Love. It's not what I'm used to, so I don't want it. That's the issue to me. So yeah.
Do you have any kind of closing thoughts or takeaways or things that are on your mind as we start to wrap this up?
Yeah, I don't let's see. I guess yeah, just the main thing to just reiterate, I guess, like is that like I am doing a lot of this because I think that I it comes from a place of just feeling like the game, from a mechanical and competitive and like metagame standpoint, can be a lot better than it is if we just don't if we don't stick to ITG as like this baseline. And it's not about like trying to be antagonistic to people who like playing ITG, because like a big part of the reason I included ITG mode in the first place is because I knew that people were still going to want to play ITG. So it's like um it's more just, yeah, like it's not about trying to say anyone is wrong for liking something, or anyone is wrong for playing a certain way or whatever. It's mostly just that um that I have a lot of ideas that are like in my head that I think about a lot, but um yeah, they're just like not fully realized at this point. So yeah.
Well, Steve, thanks for coming on. I really, really appreciate. I guess now that I know it's not just you, but also Oliver as well. The work that you guys have been putting into Waterfall to make ECFA 2021 like a really good experience. Do you have any shoutouts as we close this interview out?
Yeah, so I had a few people. One, I think like one of the main ones I would say Dan or Quietly Turning was one of the biggest influences on making this in the first place. Just because I think it can't be overstated how influential in a good way Simply Love has been for the game, just because like the entire shift to using SM5 would not have happened without it, pretty much, because like that was the theme that accommodated the ITG community, you know. So and that brought with it a lot of progress, and also just like obviously when you build a theme off of something else, you become really familiar with everything that went into it. So it's like I have like a much greater appreciation for everything that is in that theme. So yeah, like I just like big shout out to Quietly Turning for making Simply Love and making it as good as it is. Sujit, I want to acknowledge because he helped with some of the technical stuff, particularly some of the hashing stuff. Like actually a lot of the Python script that generates the hash cache externally is based on his code that he uses for groove stats. So just something to note there. So yeah, he's been a help. I also want to shout out Mason, because like I think Mason is another person who I think is like I think he's really smart and he has a lot of really good ideas about the game. He doesn't really interact with the community that much, like a whole lot, but he's given me some of the best, like most thoughtful feedback on like every aspect of the theme consistently. So I want to acknowledge that as well. Chief Skittles did a lot of promotion for this. Like he kind of like promoted. He was one of the earliest people promoting what I was doing, and I thought that was cool. So I wanted to acknowledge that. I want to also mention Taro Nuke, because he's been picking up the slack for things that I didn't do for the ECFA 2021 features. So like people come along and they're like, man, it'd be cool if I knew that this score was a personal best for ECFA, and I'm like, god damn it, I should have done that. And then Taro Nuke was like, I got you. So yeah, like Taro Nuke has a whole like list of mods for the theme, and I want to mention that those are cool that because like that, yeah, a lot of work went into that. And then in general, just the ECFA 2021 theme, or the team, not theme. So McGB in particular, like he's kind of been like the leader of ECFA 2021 specifically, and he feels pretty passionately about the event, and like when people have feelings about it, positive or negative, like he takes it to heart. I think people like he's a really good person, and he really wants the event to be the best it can be. I can say that for certain based on all the conversations I've had. Kyle as well. Kyle is just for leading ECFA in general. Like I feel like he would be able to tell you, like, if I have like something that I disagree with or something about ECFA, like I've usually been pretty vocal to him directly about it. And so I don't know, hopefully it's meaningful if I say, like, I think ECFA is really good. I think ECFA 2021 is really good, and I love that Kyle is continuing to like curate that community and the content and all that stuff. I think it's really cool. Like the ECFA community in general is a really good thing. And just the whole team, there's around like 6 or 7 people, and I can't count off the top of my head, but like, you know, Implode, Chief Skittles, Leon, and Mason, myself, Kyle, McGB, yeah. So the whole ECFA 2021 team everyone, like, I feel like something that can easily go undernoticed is the amount that everyone kind of like busted their ass right up until the launch of the event to like make it good. we were doing those ratings, or at least I didn't really do the ratings much, but the tech radar ratings were done by like playtesting the charts multiple times and like checking them and stuff. And obviously when you have 400 charts, some of them come out a little weird and people say things, but
yeah, some of them.
But feel pretty good, I would like to say. And you know, a lot of time was spent on that by like everyone in the group. So like, I just want to say like a lot of work went into this. So like, I think that it's something that should be acknowledged. Yeah. So I guess that's my long-winded shout outs.
Well, thank you, SteveReen, for jumping on. I'm hoping to get Chief Skittles actually next week to talk about stamina patterning.
Nice.
Yeah. This is Dance Games Daily again. I talk about dance games every weekday. I renamed it away from ECFA Daily so I could talk about stamina content as well. So if there's other guests that you want to see on, either for the tech or stamina side, like totally let me know and I'll have them on. Other than that, thanks again, Steve, for jumping on. And
Yeah,
I'll
thanks
catch you
for
guys.
having me on.
I'll catch you guys next week.